want me to run that? One person I know that has these flat lists. You like those flat lists? I love the flat lists. Really? Little Sean. I'm more of a rounded.
So that's the same as this, right?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tabernacle Township Committee meeting for October 28, 2019. Please stand for the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have sunshine notice. This meeting is called pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting of October the 28th, 2019 is sent to the Central Record, Burlington County Times, and Anterior Post. Posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall. It has remained continuously posted as required notices under the statute. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the Municipal Clerk. We have roll call. Ms. Brown. Here. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Moore. Mr. Yates.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Present.
Thank
Before we get started, the Deputy Mayor needs to leave in 1 hour. The closed session resolution contract negotiation with respect to the Tabernacle Township Fire Company will be struck from the agenda. We will not be talking about that this evening. Okay. Public comment. Anyone has any comment on agenda items only, please come forward, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. Stuart Brooks, Moores Meadow Road. Regarding item 10, engineer's report. Mr. Guzzi, will you be reporting whether the DOT awarded Tabernacle the grant that it applied for? Yes or no? That's the LEAF report, local aid infrastructure report, to finish Carranza Road. That grant. We'll be reporting whether or not we received that grant.
Yeah, I have a communication from DOT on the discretionary grant, so yes, I will respond to that.
Okay, terrific. Also on that same item, regarding the contract negotiations with the fire company, I understand that was stricken from the agenda. Will the subcommittee be reporting on its meeting with the fire company? As of the last meeting, I know that Committeeman Moore had reached out to set up a meeting roughly a month ago. Has a meeting been held? And even if it has been held or has not been held, will the subcommittee be issuing a report? Will that report be written? Will that report be oral? Lastly, regarding item 8, the best practices, 2 answers, numbers 12 and 35, have answers, I should say 2 questions, 12 and 35, have answers of, quote, prospective. What does that answer mean? I'd like to know what that means. If you would address that when you reach it in the agenda, I'd appreciate it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
So what were those numbers, 12 and 35?
12 and 35.
Thanks.
Anyone else from the public? Mr. Brooks?
Thank you. Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road as well. I have a question about Resolution 113 awarding Arawak paving for the 2019 road program. What roads is that? What roads are going to be paved by Arawak?
Okay, we'll respond to that on the engineer's report.
Okay. Well, let me just say that it's usually been the practice of this committee to hold voting on various issues, a large range of issues when the committee hasn't been a full committee. We've had fewer than 5 people. This committee took a second vote on road resolutions regarding Oakshade and Cricketsville when Mr. Moore, who voted against these particular resolutions on the previous agenda, was absent. This second vote initiated by Mayor Barton after the first vote failed was somewhat a sleazy way of doing things because the mayor knew that Moore was going to be absent. And I know Mr. Lee was here, and he too had voted against those two resolutions. Your actions appear a bit hypocritical, using politics rather than facts regarding road improvement. These two roads don't need to be paved. Anyone who's ridden over them can see that pretty quickly. And we still have Carranza Road with the lowest rating in the town, as determined by your engineer, Mr. Guzzi, and a road that hasn't been paved for properly paved for over 35 years. We don't know about the outcome of your local infrastructure grant, but asking for $2 million on the LAIF program seems pretty absurd, and is and in our estimation, we think it's probably hasn't succeeded. But we'll hear from you later on that. I also want to address an issue regarding something that you say over and over again, Mayor Barton, that you're not going to finish Carranza Road until Shamong ponies up the money or their share of the repaving. But the problem with that is we got $245,000 to do the 6/10 of the road, which was done through our urging, heavy urging. And you didn't have any problem sharing that money with the Shamong side of the road because it was impossible to pave the road without paving Shamong's side. So what's the difference now? We have 6/10 to finish, the grant should go in to pave Carranza Road, finish the 6/10 of Carranza Road before you do any other roads. We got the lowest rating and it hasn't been done. So we would appreciate that you don't pave roads that don't need to be paved and take care of Carranza Road.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
And
Clerk.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else with public? Chief Kennard?
Andy Clark from my report. I just had a question. I see a motion on there to approve one of our members to the New Jersey State Firemen's Association. I appreciate. I had a lot of talk with Sean about getting that rectified. I guess my question would be, it could be answered at another time, but just will there be moving forward a way that it doesn't have to wait 2 months? You know, because we had this question, it came up, and it was just back and forth. It was handed off to a committee to get questions, and back to me, and it bounced around for a little bit. So is there and I don't know procedures, but would Sean be able to approve something like that if everything's in order with the application? You know, is there a motion that could be made to be able to do that instead of doing these individually for each member? So I would be kind of...
I'll have our attorney respond to that. Andy, my understanding is that LaShawn cannot sign off on that until she has the approval of the committee.
Individual for each member that comes up. That was my question. We weren't sure if there was if there was an overriding motion or a resolution that could be made that she would have that authority to have that. So, anyhow,
our attorney will give you the right answer. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Mayor, I want to comment on that. I think Andy brings up a really good point, because if he gets a member that comes to the firehouse and wants to apply, and it's a 2-month process for approval, I think there ought to be a way to streamline it. We did the same thing with street opening permits. We were getting bombarded with street opening permits from South Jersey Gas, and it got to the point where it was not productive for South Jersey Gas to be able to get work executed. And this is pretty simple. I think the chief has the ability to be able to screen the applicants, and so does the executive committee there. And we ought to, and I concur with you that we clearly ought to make sure we find a way to be able to streamline this process. So I look forward to Pete's response on that.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion. And we're going to go into ordinances, second reading of 2019-9, an ordinance of the Township of Tabernacle Township, County of Burlington, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 2, Administration by adding Section 32, closed session minutes. Explanatory statement is this ordinance is being held on second reading to replace Resolution 2018-90, which amends Chapter 2 to include Section 32 closed minutes and creates the minutes review subcommittee in a proactive attempt to ensure the availability of closed session minutes to the public. So we're going to open this to the public. Anyone from the public have any comments, please come down, state your name and address. Mrs. Brooks? Go ahead, ma'am.
This is just
Please
nothing
come-
on the
yeah.
agenda?
Oh, no, this is on the ordinance.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, we will have a public section at the end.
Van Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. It's taken 2 tries to get this ordinance right, and had the committee originally implemented the ordinance back in the summer containing the settlement language. I don't think it'll be here today in another hearing, but that didn't happen. There was an insistence that that the settlement language not be completely included in the ordinance, or at least there was an appearance of a conflict in the language that was in the ordinance that, in the sense of the provision, conflicted with. I know you don't agree with me, Mr. Lang, but I'm glad to see you finally got it in there correctly. The one thing about this delay is that it engendered a whole series of additional fees, publication fees. So there are several, the ordinance had to be republished in the classified ads, which cost the taxpayers additional money. So if it had been done right from the very beginning, as the attorneys discussed in their telephone calls, it would have been taken care of, and we wouldn't be, taxpayers would be paying for multiple publications. So, and of course, there are probably additional fees from Mr. Lang for making the added changes to the ordinance that's being heard tonight. The other thing that I commented on before is this use of proactive language. The proactive attempt that's still in the ordinance. You folks have been violating OPMA for years with regard to closed session minutes. It took my lawsuit to get that straightened out. But I'd like to point out that from any way you look at proactive, my lawsuit was filed on May 18th of 2018. This the resolution, the original resolution, 2018-90, which was the way you handled closed session minutes last year, after I filed my complaint, that resolution itself was adopted at August 27, 2018. So in the strict sense of the term, proactive, my complaint preceded the resolution that you adopted that you're calling as, you're making it seem like it was proactive. But, and I really do understand why you want to spin it this way, because there was such extensive non-compliance with the OPMA. So, but whatever you call it, you can call it proactive, but technically speaking, it's nowhere near proactive because my complaint, and I know, I'm waiting for your response, Mr. Lang, but the point is that my lawsuit preceded, you did the resolution, and I was the prevailing party in that lawsuit. So I would say that proactive doesn't belong there because it isn't true. I'm glad that we're finally getting it straightened out, and that indeed you will we hope that you'll be in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Brooks.
Stuart Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. I would like to applaud the efforts of the committee in finally getting a procedure duly adopted by ordinance to deal with closed minutes. It's a long time coming, hasn't existed before, and I'll also give you a partial applause for adding explanatory statements to your ordinances. It's helpful to the public, but I gotta give you a big demerit for putting the word proactive in this one, as Mrs. Brooks had laid out for the second time. You were brought to this ordinance, to passing this ordinance, through litigation. You never would have reached it if there hadn't been litigation. And to describe this ordinance as proactive is to stick a positive word in the record that's forever going to be in the minutes. It's going to put you in a positive light that frankly you don't deserve. This was a response to bring yourself into compliance. It's good that you're now in compliance, but that's really as far as it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anyone else on ordinance 2019-9? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Have a motion? A second?
I'll second that comment.
Okay, yes.
I looked at this and really thought about the proactive word. I don't think it really matters, frankly. We're not looking at this ordinance for what happened in the past to talk about what happened in the past. It doesn't really, it's really irrelevant at this point. This ordinance is for work moving forward. I think it's important for the committee to adopt this, and I'm glad we're doing it. And I think moving forward is the important thing to consider at this point. I don't think it matters what happened in the past. Did a lot of things happen in the past to get here? Yeah, but so what? We're here, so let's move forward and get this done. I'm glad we're doing it. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander Lee. Any other comments from the committee? Take a roll call.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes, resolutions. Resolution 2019-111, authorize the award of a contract for snow and ice removal from township roads for the 2019-2020 season. Have a motion?
Second.
Any discussion required?
Doug, where are they headed?
Pardon me?
Where are they going?
Same sections they've done before.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-112, authorize the award of a contract to Jesco Incorporated for the purchase of John Deere backhoe to the ESCNJ. Have a motion?
I'll make a motion and I'll have a comment.
Okay, second.
Second. For the record, Jesco is spelled with one S, Jesco. I don't think it really matters at this juncture, but when we get this memorialized and whatnot, probably ought to have red spelling.
Any others? Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay. Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes.
Okay.
Resolution 2019-113, authorize the award of a contract to Arrowback Paving for the 2019 road program. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, second?
I'll second it, but could Mr. McKessie also answer
Absolutely.
the question?
Okay, can you go over the scope of work of the 2019 road program?
Sir, this is repaving work on Kramer, Holly Park, and Sylvan Court. This was basically last year's, our 2019 road program, which was approved earlier, earlier this year, and we received bids on October 16th, I believe it was, and the low bidder was Arawak Paving for the total bid price of $561,000. This is local money, not grant money.
Mayor, at this point, I'm going to rescind my motion.
Okay, and did they provide the schedule yet, or we haven't awarded yet?
But not until we award, so if we award tonight, then we'll be able to schedule.
Okay. Okay. Did you make the motion, Steve?
I made it, I'm rescinding it.
Okay. Someone else want to make the motion? Okay. Deputy Mayor made the motion. Any further discussion required? Okay. Yeah, Joe, you still second it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
No.
Mr. Gates? Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-114, adopting technology risk management standards in compliance with the New Jersey Municipal Excess Liability Joint Insurance Fund Cyber Risk Management Plan Tier 1 requirements. And there's going to be a second resolution after this that will be a motion in a second. I'll Rodney explain.
We combine these two?
Now I need them each separately.
Okay, I'll make a motion for 114.
Second? Okay. Rodney, would you like to go over this, or Doug?
This is to bring us in compliance with the MEL's minimum requirements coming up on this year. The MEL provides us through the JIF our cyber risk insurance. This This is part of the program that gets us into compliance for that, so we can get a reasonable price for cyber risk insurance. And also, by adopting Tier 1, it reduces our out-of-pocket expenses on a claim from $10,000 to $5,000. And Tier 2 lowers it another $2,500. So that's the incentive for us to do it. It also puts us in a better market because all the towns in our JIP are becoming part of this and adopting this. We brought in a cyber consultant this year through the JIF, and they've worked diligently to work with the NEL and what they've established as a program to make us less likely to have a cyber attack be successful.
Okay, any other further questions or discussion?
Mayor, is it possible to join 2019-114 and 115 together?
I just asked that. That's what I was asking when we first started.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
No, it's okay, Doug said we couldn't do it.
we can't do it?
I need to do them separately so we show that we've done both.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-115, adopting technology risk management standards in compliance with New Jersey Municipal Excess Liability Joint Insurance Fund Cyber Risk Management Plans Tier 2 requirements. Have a motion?
Second.
Any discussion required? Okay, roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-116, authorized the replacement of temporary signs in a public right-of-way for the Tabernacle Recreation Committee annual tree lighting ceremony.
Second.
Okay, and this will be for December 6th, is the tree lighting ceremony, and Doug, I understand the gazebo will be 100% complete with electric, lights, landscape, concrete, etc., correct?
If the weather holds out, yes.
Okay. Any discussion required? Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Yates? Mayor Barton?
Yes. Approval of the bills, motion to adopt the bills. Second? Okay, any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore? Okay. Mr. Moore's not here. How about Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Barton?
Yes. Approval of the minutes of September 9th, 2019 workshop.
So
And,
moved.
okay, get a second.
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Approval of minutes for September 29th, 2019 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Best practices, governing bodies acknowledgement. Rodney?
Yeah, so I completed, well, with the assistance of Doug, the best practices checklist as required by the state. We completed it, we passed announcements. We scored a 43, I believe it was, where the minimum number is a 30 without them withholding some of our aid. Regarding to the two questions that were brought up earlier, questions number 12 and 35 stating as perspective. The first one was, do we have a formal policy on the amount of fund balance that we maintain? And we do not, but we will be considering one, because that is actually looked at favorably when we go in for a bond rating, for a rating company. We want to know that that's in there. And the other question is regarding professional contract or professional service contracts, having a not to exceed amount within your resolution when you handle those agreements. I don't believe all of them do, so that's why in perspective, meaning that in the future, we will do that where feasible.
Rodney, is there any reason we can't do number 4? Doesn't seem like it's a heavy lift.
No, it's not. There's definitely things in here, you know, this is just a checklist that we go through that we can consider going forward. Not all questions had a possibility of answering as perspective. You had some of them are just yes or no.
Right.
So yes, going through this checklist, there's definitely things that we can improve upon.
My only thought was number 4 doesn't cost anything.
No,
And it gives you another yes.
Yes.
Not that we are borderline of
correct,
needing points, but it
Correct.
doesn't cost anything.
correct.
And given the fact we've got employees that are working in other municipalities, it probably would be safe to do that.
Yes.
Is that something that's done through the, how do you go about that process?
It's just putting the policy in place to do it.
So just an action by the committee?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, number 9, motion approving New Jersey State Firemen's Association membership application for Michael E. Stewart. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion required?
Pete, can we get an answer on this by the next meeting?
I can. I was just going to indicate, I appreciate you giving me that time, because I was going to have to confide that I'm not sure whether that power of appointment rests with the governing body or whether it can be delegated. So I'll look into that and respond to that question at the next meeting.
Thanks.
Okay, roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Gordon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, reports. Engineers report, Mr. Duffy.
Just a few updates. The 2019 drainage project, drainage improvement project is underway. That's Giverson Construction. That's Richter and Moore and Indian Mills Road drainage improvements. Also Flyout Road repair, work is underway. Contractor Short Connection anticipates being substantially complete next week. And we've also been working with Doug to prepare application for the 2020 Community Development Block Grant. That in Tabernacle is pretty much limited to removal of architectural barriers, handicap accessibility improvements, and we're preparing the application for the chairlift here in the municipal building, as well as the some restoration in the bathrooms downstairs to make them conforming with respect to current ADA requirements. So we'll be preparing and making that application for those projects for next year's funding.
Thank you, Dave. Environmental consultant, Doug?
The largest area of groundwater contamination we have, and we do change community people, we do change some committee people, but we haven't changed Kim Brown, who's been involved with us from the beginning, along with the other men from Lakesworth, primarily Kim, Joe, and support from Doug, Peter, and LaShawn. And it's hard to be proactive, guys. We're constantly badgering DEP to get where we are. So I want to tell you a couple things about home sales and what they're called the point of entry treatment systems. And this could be for any contamination that is elsewhere in the state that they deem is not a naturally occurring situation, like the gross alpha contamination that we have in approximately 20% of our shallow wells, and sometimes some of the farm areas for nitrate. These point of entry treatment systems, filtration systems, have been put on about 30 homes in the Richter Road, Hawkins area groundwater area, and they were originally paid for by the state. The state withdraws funding after you sell your home. Peter and I prepared and fought this in the rulemaking process, and we were turned down. The state's trying to keep their money that they collect from chemical taxes, but that's the case. So if you're ever anticipating selling your house, don't wait for having a sales contract. Sample 6-9 months before you're going to sell, because then at least you'll be able to offer the buyers the treatment system unit. They're not going to get maintained anymore, and the state's not going to pay for it, but at least the unit will be in the door. If you have a sales contract, you contamination comes back bad where the state would have paid for a filtration system, they're not going to pay for it if you're selling a house. The other part is we've had 30 homes out of approximately 135 that were sampled in that Richter Road groundwater area. And people get a little recalcitrant or slippage, not recalcitrant is an appropriate word, but people were not monitoring their systems, even though a lot of them were paid by the state, unless you sold your home and it's private maintenance. We did get the state to sample existing state-funded filtration systems for the raw water coming out of the groundwater right at the wellhead and the carbon-treated water. The response I got so far until I see data is, oh, we think there's not been breakthrough. In other words, the carbon's lasting as long as it should, but we want data. That's kind of how we've had to do this the whole way through. So if anyone has questions about the sampling or if they have bad sample results, LaShawn forwards to me, we get notice. We kind of know when areas are getting notice for groundwater. Please, the calls will get forwarded to me if you call the township. DEP most recently sampled their monitoring wells, the test wells, the non-drinking water wells, and out of approximately 16 locations, 5 have actually increased in the contaminants, which are the dry cleaning fluid, which may go back to the original location of the source out on 206, and that's tetrachloroethylene, and also trichloroethylene. And the predominant contaminant well depth area is 60 to 90 feet. It has not shown up in any of the sampling for the wells because anyone from the area knows after a while, if you're not drinking from 90 feet, you're drinking from 385. Okay, there's not much groundwater availability for well depths between those distances. None of the deep wells have shown any of the contaminants, and they do get sampled when they're replaced or originally installed. So we're still looking to monitor wells in the streets where the people drink the water, right off the street, of up to 181 parts per billion for some of these contaminants in the standard 1. My position with this, with DEP, is the resampling in December, and the groundwater is not changing. There's a lot of draws in that depth. There's a lot, 135 homes out there. Probably most people are in that shallow groundwater zone for drinking. And I said, skip the monitor wells, guys. Please sample houses. They have a new geologist. I'm hoping she'll work with us better. They supposedly have some dedicated funds, and I'd rather have homes sampled. In 2017, Mr. Kramer and I met with a representative from the Commissioner's Office. The DEP advised us at that time, for the first time since 2003, 2004, that they're not sure, and they've released a potential source area out on 206 where they had stated in a factual document that 2,800 gallons of tetrachloroethylene from the dry cleaner were missing, that they used to actually pay to be taken away and were presumably discharged, which would have made a lot of sense. So they don't have an idea where it's coming from, and the state's response was that when you sell your house, you'll sample it and you'll find out then. That's unacceptable. Even though there is a portion of this that is a private responsibility for having your well tested every couple of years. It's extremely difficult to deal with people who come in and they're on the bubble and they don't get the second bad sample to get the state to pay for a system, or they have to pay for a system themselves they didn't even realize may happen, and that they have children. Those are the calls we take. We're not scoring points on that in Trenton when they say, well, you'll find out when you sell it. And so we'd rather have homes sampled instead of the monitor wells. Another part is that I've dealt with people who are buying and selling in that area. Since 2012, we've been pleading with the state to change their 2 community websites for the community relations, public monies websites from Joanne's Cleaners and Richter Road groundwater contamination. It's the same case. And it's the same update status fact sheets that haven't been updated in 8 years. So I now have a new bureau chief, a new geologist, a new case manager, who I hope I don't have to add to the wall of shame of previous commissioners and assistant commissioners and bureau chiefs and case managers who didn't get this fixed in the last 8 years. There should be one place that people do go online and be able to see a status. For instance, how long you can expect carbon to last if you put that kind of treatment system. Again, I'm going to take up more time. You could have probably done this yourself. But, call the township. If you know somebody has a question about this, call us. I can go over maps. I can go over locations. There's 16 different locations in the street over there. Richter, Worrell, Wynn, Rydell. A whole bunch of the streets over there have monitor wells, and I'm tired of seeing bad sample results 100 feet or less from the people's drinking water well. So we're pushing the state to spend more money on sampling homes. Thanks again for your guys' support, and it's really, we're as squeaky as we can be to get what we think is appropriate there. And there are outbreaks of other contamination, in the township. That's natural. A lot of gross alpha comes back. Approximately 20% of the shower wells have gross alpha contamination. Gross alpha contamination is fixed by your normal conditioner. Not intended to, but it does coincidentally treat it. And please maintain your systems, just in case you have that and you haven't even sampled. Thanks.
Any questions from the committee? Does anyone from the public have any questions of our environmental consultant? If so, what I'd like to do is have you meet with him individually. Is that okay, Doug?
Yep.
After our meeting, or when we go into executive session? Anyone else have a question? We have one lady, two. Anyone else? Okay. You're okay with that, Doug? Yeah.
Thank you, Doug.
If you want, we can give you a room downstairs. Okay. Mr. Sundberg, emergency management report.
Good evening, folks. I just wanted to bring to people's attention that this Saturday, November 2nd, from 9 a.m. to noon, we'll be exercising our point of distribution plan, which will be the free flu clinic. So anybody who wants to come out, it's for adults only, but anybody who wants to come out by the carload, come to Seneca High School Saturday morning, beginning at 9 through 12 p.m. And we'll be getting you free flu shots, and it helps us exercise our emergency operations plan in the case of something like a flu pandemic. This is different from the last exercise at Holy Eucharist, where we just gave out Tic Tacs as if we had to give out pills for a different type of illness. In this case, the nurses from the health department will actually be administering flu shots for free to the general public. So, and also Sunday we'll be having Tabernacle Fall Festival over at Olson Middle School and Tabernacle Elementary School. So if you want to come out, touch a truck, and have some fun, the community's welcome to come out on Sunday.
What time is that?
So that's going to be from 11 to 3.
Okay, so November 2nd,
And
9 to 12, right, at Seneca High School for flu shots. And
November 3rd.
the festival is October, is this Sunday?
Yeah, it got postponed from last weekend, so it's a good time to be able to say it got postponed, it's happening this weekend.
Okay.
Thank you very much, folks.
Any questions for Mr. Sundberg?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Kramer.
Okay, first thing I want to do is pick up where Dan left off on the Community Development Block Grant. We will be having a public hearing on that on our November meeting to discuss what we end up submitting, or what we do that, and we will need your approval that night to move forward, because the grant has to be in before our next meeting, our December meeting. Also, we have received a dividend amount of $10,390 from the GIF this year, and as we usually do, we are applying it to next year's cost. Also on the GIF, we have a save a date for the elected officials liability seminar. It will be on December 5th, Thursday night, in East Hampton at O'Connor's. I will need at least 4 of you to go, and the committee members elect in November are encouraged to go, and will count towards our savings. So,
Do the committee members elect him as part of your board?
Yes. And I would encourage the new committee members elected after November to get in touch with me, and we'll get you on the list, get you registered. We are working right now on developing office space within this building, removable office space for our deputy clerk, for our records management clerk, and for our deputy court administrator. We have, in your package, you received some sketches of the proposal for downstairs for the deputy clerk, and you also received some line sketches for the land development board secretary, records management clerk, and the deputy court administrator to be up here. They're located where the judge's bench is right now. That was part of the plan when we moved on to Woodland and a shared service report to free up some space within this building, and we're moving forward with putting removable office cubicles, basically, along that back so it doesn't infringe on the area that we're already using here, but provides office space for both of those employees. That's me.
Do you need anything from the committee to move forward on this stuff? Do you have the funding in place?
We have the funding in place. We wanted to bring you in aware of it, and we'll be moving forward. It's on state, these are on state contract for ESCNJ. The state contract appears to be the option right now. So we would like your blessing for us to continue to move forward on this.
And the cubicle downstairs, this puts all the employees in a secure environment from the general public, is that correct?
Yes.
That's the purpose of this?
Yes. And to have the area be able to be locked up for security reasons.
And is this a handicap?
Yes.
Okay.
So what prompted the thought to put this together? The concept?
We didn't want to put any permanent structure in the building because we don't know where this building's eventually going to end up. So it was something that we could install and remove and take with us if we went somewhere else.
That was my next thought. I mean, I think the committee at some point really ought to address what the long-term plans are going to be for space. I appreciate putting this together. I appreciate trying to make an effort to do this and make it feasible, but I think the committee's got to make some decisions about long-term usage for facilities. I'll go back to the Hawkins Road property, the rescue squad building. We've kicked that around. We've even said we wanted to sell it. Have we done anything with that at this point?
We're still waiting to come up with our final drainage on there, so we know if we have to use any of that property. Once we know that, we will.
I appreciate doing this. My point is I'm hopeful the committee at some point in the future can make some decisions about what we're doing with facilities, because it's employees are doing the best they can with what they have to work with, and frankly I think the public deserves better.
Okay, moving on to the next. The airlines are about 50% complete right now being installed to ESP. They should be finished this week. So that will be moving on. And the speed signs are in. We are getting them charged, assembled, and we hope after Mischief Night and Halloween to put them out on Lee Drive as our first street to put them out. We are continuing to work with a couple different companies on upgrading our internet and phone systems. That's moving along very well. We look forward to finishing that up here before the end of the year.
I have an answer for you, by the way.
Okay.
In terms of the fiber connection. You need to reach out to Jennifer Young directly.
Okay.
She was shocked when I told her that we were told that we couldn't get access
Okay.
So, I'm glad you brought that up, because I would have brought it up.
We've had a couple issues over this last month. Tom Boyd is here, our code enforcement. I'm going to let him speak about the air cannon that's been going on and what we have found out, what our role is limited to. And Tom, you could...
And Tom, while you're here, could you also talk about Irish Causeway?
Sure. As it relates to, excuse me, the boom cannon, my office has received numerous complaints regarding a boom cannon which has been going off at the Haynes Farm in the area of, I guess, Carranza, Old Indian Mills, and Tuckerton, in that area. We've received complaints from Carranza Road, Soneway, Gate Road, Tuckerton Road, Old Indian Mills Road, I believe that's about it. We did some investigation. Mr. Haynes does have a legal permit to operate said cannon. The permit is allowed to be used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, based on the fact that the deer in the area have caused extensive damage to his crops. Investigators from the Division of Fish and Wildlife have been out to ascertain that it's being operated properly, and every condition of his permit has been that he is operating it properly. Some of the residents had asked, there's a Assembly Bill 2732 allows for a, whenever a governing body or a municipality adopts a resolution to undue hardship on nearby residents as a result of the use of any such device, and requests that the division deny or cancel the right to use such device. The director of the Division of Fish and Wildlife, after review, may deny or cancel a permit to use such. The process for that would be, if the township committee were to decide to limit the hours of such, it would go to the County Agricultural Board, then forward up to the State Agricultural Board, that the Director of Fish and Wildlife would consult with those individuals. In consultations I've had with residents that have talked with the County Ag Board, they have stated that they will not, in fact, recommend denying or limiting the hours of such usage based on the fact that the deer had caused such extensive damage to the crops. Also, I will turn it over to Mr. Lang on this, but in my very limited research, any court cases I've found have not been very good for the municipalities that have brought anything forward to try to stop the utilization of such a device. The county board, Ag Board, does in fact investigate prior to their approval of it from the Fish and Wildlife, and they did so. So that's about it for the boom cannon. I understand the residents' concern. I also understand the farmers' concern with the deer doing damage to the crops. When I asked the Fish and Wildlife as to why it was for a 24/7, the answer was basically the deer are most active at nighttime hours, that it's just not limited to daytime. The other question has been asked as far as why are the decibel limits at residential boundary lines above what the legal limit would be as determined by the Department of Environmental Protection, and they are the ones that issue the permit and allow it. And the very simple answer is, if they were at that limit, it would not do any deterring of the deer, the information that they found. So that it has to be at a louder level in order for the deer to be moved. It is an allowable use of such under the right to farm, and is being operated on within all the permit that has been issued to it. I've also been in consultation with the state police regarding Irish Causeway. I believe at the last township committee meeting, it was requested that I look into writing up an individual for blocking the road under township ordinances. After consultation with Mr. Lang, it was determined the best course of action would be to go through the state police issuing a disorderly persons offense. I have been in contact with the state police. I was with them last week in conjunction with Mr. Lang, and we were going to be going out there today. The state police actually have to discuss with the individual to determine if there, first of all, is a violation. If they determine if there is a violation, they will give that individual an opportunity to correct the violation so that nothing would have to be issued. During the course of the investigation, there was a little bit of discrepancy that I wasn't comfortable with. I contacted Mr. Guzzi, and I'm going to be meeting in his office tomorrow morning to get all the information that he has, just so that when I go to the state police, I have all my facts in a row so that there's no guessing as to what we're going with. So, and then the only other thing I just want to say is, just to bring you folks up to speed, Seneca Reserve, basically phase 1 is sold out. I think there's only 1 or 2 lots in that development that is not sold, and they have sold phase 2. However, they can't issue permits at this point until we get everything resolved with Pinelands for the approvals on that aspect. And then lastly, I just want to note that we are on pace this year to issue the highest amount of permits ever issued by the construction department. So it's been a rather busy year between the new construction, the gas lines on the east side of town, and just the economy in general has been good, so people are spending money.
So Tom, with this resolution, or this state statute 3732 that you talked about, and a resolution having to do with the air cannon?
Yes, sir.
So your experience is that even if we did pass a resolution to try to restrict this in any way, it would go to the Ag Board, is that correct?
That is correct. It would go to the County Ag Board and the State Ag Board. Residents that have called me to complain about the noise when they've spoken with the County Ag Board, they have relayed to me that allegedly it's been said that they will not recommend a repeal of it, that the farmer has a right to do this under the right to farm.
Having served as chair of that county board of ag, I can concur with that.
If I could add into that, this town has always been a farming community, and people move in here knowing it's a farming community. So to take a farmer's livelihood away from him by not allowing such could possibly put him out of business. So even if you wanted to put an ordinance in, I'd be against it.
Tom, what's your plan there, Andrew?
Corn that we know of, and we're not sure if it's soybean.
I think so.
I'm not sure. I do know of corn because the woman in the Division of Fish and Wildlife stated corn. There was damage in the corn.
I think the beans at this end are on his ground. That's, I think he had beans also.
So after the harvest, there'll be no use to operate the air cannon, correct?
That is correct, and I apologize. The permit does expire at the end of next month.
End of November.
That is correct, yes.
How long has the cannon been there since about September?
We started receiving complaints.
Late August?
No, not till mid to end of September, probably for about a month now. So I don't know when.
Middle of September.
Pardon?
Middle of September.
Middle of September.
Any questions for Mr. Blake further? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Don't you have anything else?
Me? Yes. My report. We're going to do it now.
I apologize, Mayor. I should have had this on the agenda. The rescue squad has their fourth report.
Okay. Chief, you have a quarterly report you wanted to present to us?
I do.
Please come forward.
Thanks. Chief Jackson, Tabernacle Rescue Squad. This is the third quarter report for 2019 for the Tabernacle Rescue Squad. This is for the third quarter only. We had a number of dispatches were 242. Types of emergency calls, 5 fire calls, 33 MVAs, 98 medical emergencies, 2 overdoses, 15 breathing problems. No cardiac arrests this quarter. Cardiac emergencies 16, 21 unconscious, 7 traumas, 6 strokes, 5 standbys, 3 rehab assignments, 6 psychs, and 29 falls. We logged 4,984.5 volunteer hours. Our average response time was 4 minutes and 39 seconds. Duty crew responded 187 of the incidents, 24 where the second rig was used, and 5 where the third rig was used. Rescue 4399 was used 7 times, and rehab 4398 10. We served a total of 224 patients during the quarter. Our destinations were our virtual memorial, 77 times, virtual Voorhees 30 times, virtual Voorhees 14 times, Deborah, or any of its other names at this point. Now I think it's Capital Health Deborah now, 6 times, Lourdes, Burlington County, which is now known as virtual Willingboro, 3 times, Jefferson Cherry Hill, we did not go this quarter. Cooper Health System 5 times, and Atlantic Care Mainland once. Mutual aid provided 66 times to Southampton, 5 times to Chemung, 4 times to Woodland, once to Washington Township, which I gotta make a correction on this report, I'll just fix it real quick. 17 times to Medford Township, 3 to Pemberton, none to Lumberton, Mount Holly twice, and Voorhees twice. We received no mutual aid. Some of our special events and standbys we were involved in. Some of our members taught programs at Senate High School or made presentations during classes. We participated in training at the USAR facility at the Joint Base. Standbys for the Senecal football and band competition, national night out in Medford and Lumberton. Our annual chicken barbecue, which happened just before the last meeting when I was here, and the Captain Emilio Carranza Memorial Service. Yep, I just gotta fix one thing, and I will,
Any questions for the committee for Chief Jackson?
George, I got a message, voicemail from the mayor, actually, and I apologize for playing phone tag, Joe. I've been, sometimes you can get me on the phone, sometimes you can't. What's happening with Chemung Township?
Basically, as far as I know right now, is they're having issues with coverage at times, and they're putting their first 2 mutual aids on dual dispatch when they don't have a crew. Beyond that, that's all I know at this point. I'm still attempting to meet with their executive committee to see what is this temporary, is this something, and what their plan is for the future. But other than that, that's basically, I did speak with the assistant chief over there, and they're just having issues with staffing, and they're trying to resolve it right now. So if we're dispatched, if they need us, we obviously respond. If they are able to muster a crew, they recall their crew and we return. And it's us and Medford are basically the 2 towns that are covering it right now.
I'm hopeful that gets straightened out. When we first started to do when we first do billing, when that first started and the members were receiving compensation stipends, I remember the mayor actually approached us at one point and indicated that they were concerned about membership dropping in Chemung Township. Because of that, they can serve here and serve in a well-organized organization. And they were concerned about how the numbers were going to potentially dwindle. And I'm concerned that that has happened at this point, to the point where it's a mutual aid concern. So I'm really hopeful that you can be helpful in helping get.
They actually enacted a program somewhat similar to ours, and were successful with it. So I don't know what's really, because I'll be honest with you, I mean, we did go 5 times in the last quarter, but we've been there minimal times as of late, up until the past week or so. So they were doing pretty good with it. So I don't know exactly what's going on. Like I said, I reached out to them and waiting to meet with them and see what assistance we can lend and or what they need. You know, if there's anything we can do to help them.
Do you have any schedule with them at this point, or you're still?
No, I'm still playing for that.
All right. Thanks for the written financials. Also, we received those in the packet, so thank you for those as well.
Oh, all right. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Chief Jackson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. I did receive the letter from Mr. Frank that talks about the proposed zoning code amendments as it concerns age-restricted housing. That obviously was just received this evening. I'll need some time to review that, as it will the committee, but we'd like to probably list that for the next meeting so that we can take some action one way or another. And move it forward one way or another. So I'll be prepared to discuss that and his conclusions that he's characterized concerning the board process on that issue. That being said, I also did want to mention that the New Jersey League of Municipalities has issued a bulletin on October 25th wherein they characterize some of the efforts that are being made to update what's described as the outdated Open Public Records and Open Public Meetings Act. This is apparently attempting to be addressed by Senator Weinberg. As a result, and given the current bills that are in place, the League of Municipalities is reaching out and prepared a sample resolution. They are being very proactive as these two statutes get revisited. They're asking that the committee consider a sample resolution calling for a study commission to review the 20-year-old laws and in order to make recommendations given the experience of the different stakeholders. The proposed resolution is rather thorough and it does state some of the feedback, characterizes some of the feedback that I think they're getting from the municipalities given their experience with the Open Public Records and Open Public Meetings Act. It appears to be something meritorious to me, given our own experience here in Tabernacle. And so I would ask the committee to take a good look at that so that we could again, should the committee like to do anything, one way or another, look at it at the next meeting and potentially move it forward, or otherwise make a decision not to do so. But that has been provided in your packet. I would urge you to pay particular attention to the language of the resolution and the experience that it recants as it concerns the legal municipality and their constituency. So that's that. I will look into whether or not the appointing body is the committee with respect to membership in the Firemen's Association. I'll report back to the committee. Mr. Boyd pretty much covered everything with respect to the boom cannon, and so I don't think there's anything to say there other than that it's a permitted process. The statute is pretty specific as to what it enables and what the township's response could be, and it appears that based on the experience we have at the table, that any resolution would likely be fruitless given their position and the farmers' rights. There is a right to farm statute and a right to farm ordinance in the township as well. So committee's in a tough spot as it concerns those issues. And again, as Mr. Yates indicated very clearly, it's a farming community. And so it makes it a difficult process. I'm sure that the committee has empathy for those that are negatively affected. But at the same time, those issues predate probably most, if not all of us even being here. So I will, again, leave that to Mr. Boyd. With respect to the ordinance concerning the executive session minutes, I did want to respond and indicate that, in fact, it is a proactive effort on part of the committee to get out there and be ahead of this issue. The Township Committee has certainly always been in favor of open government and transparency. And the idea that the Township Committee is compelled to adopt this ordinance, I really have to reject. There is no legal basis for the ordinance. It was something that was demanded in the litigation. It's not something that I think the law would have supported should we have gone forward and resisted such demands. But again, the idea was, you're committed, as I understand the committee's decision-making and as I understand the clerk and the administrator's decision-making, the idea was that, in fact, yes, we are dedicated to open government and to transparency, and what could be wrong with formalizing this in the way of an ordinance, even though there is no legal requirement to do so. So I think to characterize it as not proactive, I think is inaccurate. You weren't under a legal obligation to do it, and you did so in order to be proactive. And in order to avoid tens of thousands of dollars potentially in additional litigation costs over fighting whether or not the law would support such a fund. So again, I think it's a mischaracterization to indicate and to not recognize the committee's and the clerk and the administrator's desire to in fact be be proactive and to demonstrate that by agreeing to adopt such an ordinance, or at least recommend for adoption of such an ordinance, even though there is, again, no legal requirement to do so. And Mayor, I think that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lynn. Okay, committee reports. Deputy Mayor, would you like to go first?
Just a couple things. Just want to address where we are with the fire company. We're scheduled to meet this week. We had a meeting scheduled earlier in, I think, October, beginning of October, end of September, and something came up, and unfortunately it had to be canceled, and it was mutually agreed that it'd be better to wait until after Fire Prevention Week, since there was a lot going on with the fire company, so that's what we did. And we're meeting with them very shortly, and we really have nothing to report because the biggest people that we need to speak to are the fire company. So once we do that, we'll have some things to talk about and go over, but until we actually sit down and talk with the chief, we're not going to be able to, chief and the president, we're not going to be able to say anything because we haven't had a conversation with them yet. And I know Mr. Lee will probably talk about Verizon. Bios, you always do. Since I get to go first, I get to talk about it first. They did show up at my door the other day, wanting to sign me up for Bios. I asked them about television and triple play, and they said, Township Committee won't allow it.
I'm sure they did.
I'm sure they did too. And told them that.
Letter?
What was that?
Did you hand the letter?
No, I told them that was not true, and I told them that they can welcome to come to the township and get a copy of the ordinance and everything that was put in place when that contract was signed, and I personally know the person that signed that contract, so.
The Comcast one.
The Comcast contract, yes, so, they said, oh, I'll take that information back, so.
The non-exclusive contract.
The non-exclusive contract, exactly, so everything that Mr. Lee had told them, you know, hasn't trickled down to the people knocking on people's doors.
Although they claim it has.
And there's a letter affirming that, in fact, it has.
Two of them.
Right, so just saying that,
Stephen's right.
Stephen was right when he said that, and I witnessed it firsthand, and like I said, I told him I know exactly who signed the non-exclusive agreement with Comcast. That's it.
Committeeman Lee?
Are there any, I just want to go back to this fire thing for a second. Are there any other conversations that are happening outside other than the one we're waiting for with the chief? Because I got a couple inquiries about what the committee's doing, because there's apparently...
Yes, we're having conversations
Okay.
with people, yes, we're speaking to people.
Okay.
But the most important people we need to speak to, we haven't spoken to yet.
But is that in support of the contract negotiation, or is that, what's the...
It has to do with what we're trying to do to get something together for
In terms of...
the contract. We're going forward with what we're trying to do.
Okay. So there's conversations other than, there's been conversations with members or?
We've had conversations with people from various backgrounds, especially, yes. We're going down the fire road and we're talking to fire personnel.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, it's my turn, isn't it? Is it my turn, Jim?
Yes, you're.
Okay, thank you. A couple things. I wanted to recognize the passing of Joe Bakos, who was a senior at Seneca who died in a car accident September 29th. He was the class of 2020, same class as my son. And I have to tell you, I want to give, first of all, I just want to publicly recognize the passing of Joe Bakos. Very sad for the Township of Tabernacle, with Seneca obviously being part of our municipality. And the one person I really want to publicly recognize is Jeff Spector, because immediately after that had happened, he sent a very heartfelt note out to the parents of the Seneca district. And I can't imagine what that must have had to be like to actually put that together. So I really want to commend him and the staff at Seneca for trying to work through that, and certainly to Joe's family, very, very sad. But I wanted to recognize that as a parent of one of Joe's classmates. I can tell you it was very, very difficult as his obituary picture came out. Was his graduation picture that we had actually received a week before. All the parents of the seniors had gotten graduation pictures had come back, and that's the one they used for Joe's obituary. But I can tell you that it was just very, very sad. But I really wanted to publicly commend Mr. Spector for handling that, really leading the Seneca family through a very tough period. I got the questions that I had regarding I'm just checking stuff off here. I just want to comment 2019-113, I voted no. Obviously made the motion because I wanted to understand what roads we were talking about. I made a public claim that I wasn't going to support any paving projects until Cranston Road was done, so that's sticking with that. Doesn't mean I don't think the other roads should be paved, but I made a public commitment. I'm going to stick to that. That's why I voted no. Last week, we hosted Assemblyman Hoketilling, who is the chair of the Assembly Ag Committee from Trenton, from the Assembly. And next week, I'm hosting Congressman Jeff Van Drew for bog tours. So this time of year is a little busy, but the nice part is we get an opportunity to be able to have direct discussions and direct contact with state assembly folks and also our congressmen. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Do you have anything about fires? Did you want to talk?
Yeah, can I have that? Yeah. This is and I gave this to Natalie actually last week. As I reported back in, was it September? Was it the last week of September? I made it really clear publicly that Verizon was telling residents, as they did Kim, that the Township Committee had to basically told Verizon we don't want television service, which is totally inaccurate. And we got a letter from Sylvia Del Vecchio apologizing, saying that we're very sorry, but Verizon is making a decision not to provide television service. I'm happy to read this letter, or we can just have it up here. But it essentially indicates, first was from Sylvia Del Vecchio, who's the BFRR representative. But then we got one from David Capazzi, who is the Associate General Counsel from Verizon out of the Virginia office, and clearly indicated that we apologize for any miscommunication on the part of our field technicians concerning the availability of Verizon Fios TV service. Verizon does not plan to provide television service in Tabernacle. Verizon chose to provide these customers with Fios digital voice, telephone service, and to extend these services to approximately 900 customers in the municipality. The bottom line is that we forced Verizon to provide internet service to residents that had nothing, which was roughly 42 actually residents. So we forced our hand at that. They threw out another 900 because they had to get past 900 to get to the 35. And then they decided we're not going to provide you television service. Now, does it make a lot of business sense? My opinion, absolutely not. It doesn't. I think it makes sense to try to create competition. They don't want competition. They made it clear. The technicians think it's our fault, but Verizon clearly has indicated we're taking the sword for this, but they're not telling the technicians. So this letter, I think, has been put on the website. Is that right, Natalie? And there's a copy of it downstairs if you want to take a look at it. But at this point, I think the only recourse that we have as a committee is this. After we get finished with Phase 4, which is the middle part of next year, the township, and as far as I'm concerned, this is a case they could win, but if the township decided to file litigation against Verizon for not completing the entire build-out of the census tract, they would win. Because clearly, in the agreement with the Board of Public Utilities, Verizon was mandated, if the 35 number was hit with the BFR program, Verizon's mandated to build out the entire census tract. They chose not to do that in this case. But if you took them to court, I think the township would win, because it's clearly indicated that's what the agreement says. So I also, Mr. Sunbury and I actually had this conversation at our last meeting, and I know it's something he's really excited about. But I will also say that I would not do anything until after Phase 4 is complete. Because if Verizon's not willing to provide television service when the line's already there, there's no telling what they would do. I think it's a stupid business decision, in my opinion. But the bottom line is that we have at this point, and well, at the completion of this project, every home in Tabernacle will have high-speed internet, which is what we were aiming for in the first place. That's all I've got, unless you've got any questions, or if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Stephen. Committeeman Yates? And Stephen, I want to personally thank you and your father. I know how much effort you put into this. I was involved with you for a short period of time through this, and this was a very large lift. Probably goes back 2 years at least?
5.
5 years? Okay. And you know, you solicited those 35 people, you got them to put up the $100 and fought Verizon all the way. It's kind of like a David and Goliath situation, but yeah.
I'm kind of irritated we don't have video, I'll be honest. I really, I didn't think they were stupid enough to not provide video. And they told us at one point early on that they weren't going to provide video, but I thought if you're going to have 900 homes, they're going to be getting Fios service. Why would you not do that? That's a win-win, because there's a lot of people that have wanted to switch from Comcast, but because they aren't providing the digital television service, it doesn't matter. The other footnote is that Verizon has just put an agreement together with YouTube TV, and Verizon will begin, as I understand it, Verizon has an agreement with YouTube TV to provide live television service through YouTube TV. So I think that could be part of it, because people are moving away from the standard cable and going to internet television and stuff.
Thank you. As far as my report, Brooks had brought up Carranza Road, and I had communicated with the NJDOT and did get a response back from them, and basically they told us that our local aid infrastructure fund for Carranza Road project, there were no available funds, and it was denied. What I would suggest the committee consider doing is reapply. I mean, we've already paved, Doug, all the way to the state forest, correct?
Correct.
So the rest of the road from the state forest to Moore's Meadow, and from Moore's Meadow to the unit is actually in state forest. It's in the state forest. And I would suggest the committee consider reapplying for the local aid infrastructure fund for 2020 for the remainder of that project and what is needed, and to do that in collaboration with the Wood State Superintendent, the Carranza Memorial folks over in Mount Holly at the VFW, the unit folks, and with Tabernacle Township, and put the grant together, send it back to the state, and see if we can push them on it. That's up to the committee whether we would want to do that or not. I would recommend that we do that. I don't think it's a big lift to do it. We get it back on our radar and stand a chance of possibly getting the rest of the road funded.
Just like Donald Trump. Maybe
To what, the Carranza Memorial?
yeah.
Rod, you did a little bit of legwork with bond counsel, didn't you, in terms of determining that bond counsel would not authorize or would not support the...
Bond council won't support it unless you have basically a ownership right, or at least lease the road.
So in other words, you have to lease a road from Tabernacle Township in order to bond for that.
So I see this as at least an opportunity to get an application in front of the DOT for a lesser amount, and put a stronger case together for it. And if the committee would be in favor, I would ask Mr. Guzzi to put that grant together and get it back to the state.
part that I'm confused with, Mayor, is road programs that were put together back in 2015, 14, said that funding was available for on the road. That's where I'm confused. Now there is no funding available.
From the state, you mean?
Excuse me?
From the state, you mean?
No, report that was put together by this committee. That's why I'm confused.
We may have contacted Shimon, and they may have at the time showed some interest in splitting the fund up like we did on Tuckerton Road, if I remember correctly. But I don't
I
think-
saw the report, I can bring it in, Shay.
Let me look, let me see that and just let me refresh my memory and maybe I can figure out whether we were working that angle at the time.
Well, we used our first, the first grant to pay roughly up, to get up to the state line, Doug, right? And I think we did that in good faith, hoping that Shimon would use their grant to complete the project.
They had some commitments for the current grants that they were working with. And the mayor's prospect and proposal was that when they got the issue of grant, they would use theirs to do the second section. And that's what I think his full intent was to do. But they've had some issues on some of their roads that they didn't get as far as they thought they could go with the grant money, and they have many more of their own residents that are affected by the problems they have on their own roads. And I think, unfortunately for the mayor, I think the rest of the committee looked at that as a more useful use of the grant money was within the projects they had already started. But I thoroughly believe that the mayor had made that commitment and intended to keep it, but as they say, he's only one vote. So, but I don't think their intention was to bamboozle us or anything like that. I think things changed, and I think the project that they were working on got much bigger real fast with all the rain and all the drainage.
So the options I see is, an opportunity, either local aid infrastructure grant, if the state would award it, would complete the project. Shimon has already indicated it's not a high priority for them to pave Carranza Road with their state grant. This committee could consider a future state grant to finish the road. We've heard from Rodney that we don't own the road, so we can't bond to pave their road. We can't pave half the road, meaning our side of the road. So, I would ask the committee to, allow Mr. Guzzi to apply for the local aid infrastructure grant for 2020, and then see what the result of that is, and into 2020, if this committee wants to apply for another state grant to finish it, or if things change in Shimon, which I don't see happening, knowing that where their other priorities are.
I don't think you're gonna get Shimon to change your mind, but I'm sitting here thinking about this. I wonder if you can get Shimon to lease the road to us for $1. I mean, it's not like they care in terms of the cost. Doug's shaking his head no. But my point is, if you can get Shimon to lease the road and then pave it, you're done. But Doug's shaking his head.
Snow, baby, snow.
Yeah.
I plowed already, and they pick up the majority of Tuckerton Road when they plow it.
Oh, swap out.
Yeah. So from that standpoint, we probably put the majority of the patch is ours on the road. That's been an ongoing verbal agreement with their public works department that they cover a little more of Tuckerton Road and we cover a little more of that. traffic isn't as heavy on ours, so, you know, we may, at some point in time, do some additional plowing or salting on Tucker Road because of our residents coming out on it, depending on the timing of the storm and all that, so, but,
And I agree with Joe, I think I think at the very least you apply for the grant, but I also think that,
well,
I also think that leasing the road and bonding it with the road program, I think at least is an option. But perhaps, I mean, you see what happens with the grant, but if you have the ability to be able to go outside the box and lease the road from Shimon, and then be able to bond it at that point under your normal road program, that's an option. But I agree with Joe, I think you at least need to try to get the free money through the state grant anyway, but maybe at the same time.
well, we have a gentleman in the audience that has years of experience with the Department of Transportation. I'd like to be able to talk to Mr. Brooks about what we need to put in the grant. I think he's made some good points earlier in the day about what we didn't do right. So I'd like to, with the committee's approval, avail myself to Mr. Brooks and his opinions on where we should make some corrections and where we can get the best bang for our buck.
I'd be happy to repeat the comments I made before and be of assistance to you as I can be.
I appreciate that.
So are we all in agreement, we're going to move forward at least with the infrastructure grant with Mr. Guzzi, Mr. Kramer, and Mr. Brooks' assistance? Okay, that's all I have to report. Public comment. If anyone has a public comment, please come forward, state your name and address. Mr. Brooks?
Stuart Brooks, 78 Moore's Meadow Road. I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Brown for her comments regarding the subcommittee, the fire subcommittee. I had asked if you were intending to issue a written report or not, and that wasn't responded to. But I also picked up on a comment where, I think in response to Mr. Lee's questions, you said you had spoken with other people, all unnamed, about what the committee was, quote, wanting to do. And I didn't know what you were talking about, because what the committee said they wanted to do last time they discussed this was they wanted to, quote, put the squeeze on the fire company by issuing them a 90-day termination letter to get them to change the contract. Mr. Moore explained that the reason behind that was because the policies regarding extrication and or training had been, quote, a flop, end quote. So this is a serious issue for the public. But there was never any discussion about what it is you wanted to do to rectify it, what the problem was, and to hear you discuss how you were meeting with other people, non-fire company people, about what the committee wanted to do made me think that you were putting the cart well before the horse. I haven't heard any discussion of what the problem is, what you guys want to do about it, and I'm concerned that you're making decisions that haven't been fully vetted or discussed. Regarding the Carranza Road application, as I said before, I think the township took the wrong tack by asking for a grant that was amounted to roughly a quarter of the state's allocation. Most of those grants, especially the infrastructure grants, proceed on small projects or larger projects divided into smaller bites. The obvious smaller bite might be to Moore's Meadow Road for the first part, and then eventually out to Carranza because it's a state facility. It's an important monument, and we can go over all of that at a later date. But any application, Mr. Guzzi, should include a description of the problem as saying, this is the road that's divided by municipal boundary, and that has been a bear of a problem to solve going back into history.
Well, it was a joint application between the two towns, so obviously it was in two municipalities.
I think that should be explicit. I think you should hammer on that. I mean, I think you should tell the DOT, this is the big problem. These are the components of it. This is how we can put it into smaller pieces so that eventually over time we will get the final, we will get to the final end.
I don't disagree with you, but remember, 3 years ago, you probably stood here saying, you know, let's apply for this discretionary grant. And at that time, I told you that getting a discretionary grant from the DOT was next to impossible. The annual grants that are offered by the DOT routinely get approved, maybe not every year, but the discretionary grants are very difficult to come by. The only reason I think we had a shot at it is because we did have the state organizations between Costello and the State Forest in support of it, and the 2 municipalities making the application. But it's I don't have to tell you, it's very difficult to get those discretionary
Yeah,
grants.
and I guess scope has to be.
So, Mr. Brooks, rather than do that now, and you gracefully accepted to be part of an advisor to our professionals, we look forward to all those comments, put them together, get a stronger application, and hopefully we can get that next step done. I think we have a pretty good story to tell how we got to where we are. You know, how do we get to the next step? But thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Annie Lashively, Hainsport, New Jersey.
Okay.
I'm here on behalf of Be the Voice of John Dog. I'm not sure if you're aware of the situation with the animal control officer. I believe that an email was sent out today with the video, the Burlington County Times article, and our letter. Basically, we're asking for the termination of the contract with the animal control officer, Charles Garrity, which Tabernacle also has. He has been videotaped actually abusing an animal. He's unprofessional, he doesn't respond when called. He had 15 towns that he was responsible for. He has now, in the past month, been terminated from 4 of those towns already. And there is an ongoing investigation with West Hampton Township Police Department. So we're just asking that you review everything and consider terminating the contract.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was the email sent to all members of the committee?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yes, they sent us the video, Stephen, and
okay. I haven't seen it. I'm not saying I didn't get it, I'm just saying I,
came in the last few
okay,
days.
okay, thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Brooks?
Road, just a quick one on Coran's Road. DOT is not going to fund anything. At first, they'll consider a lake project that goes to Moore's Meadow. The lake project that was submitted, that was denied, was just simply too big for them. We do know, Mr. Guzzi, that there was a limited amount of funds, but the funds that were asked for were just beyond DOT's ability. And so if it had been kept in Moore's Meadow, I think this whole job would have been done based on information that we collected. So if you're going to work on this, and I know that Stu would be happy to give you some guidance just in terms of what we've learned, you know, take it to Moore's Meadow and get this darn thing done, and we won't be on your back anymore. We want to be done with it. We want to have a decent road to travel on. That's all we're asking for. We pay our taxes, and we want to get some return on this, and so we're just asking you to do it right. My other point is that I think that you have a provision in our code regarding ordinances and quorums, and that provision violates state law and needs to be amended. And I would just suggest that you take a look at it and get it amended, because it became a problem for when you were going to adopt the first adopt that executive session ordinance, and the one you cleared today. So just get it cleaned up in the code. And the other point I'd like to make, I see your spin, Mr. Fleming, on how that you really support transparency, but I've prevailed in every single Oprah case, and there have been quite a few of them, unfortunately, most unfortunately, because I would prefer not to have to file them. I would prefer just to get the documents that have all been determined public documents, and that no documents would be withheld. And one of the things over the last few months since this penalty case, this Oprah penalty case was determined, is that you've been saying that it wasn't an Oprah case, it wasn't determined by the courts, but you said that multiple times, but it's just simply, what he's telling you is untrue. It's just not true. The courts found that there was an Oprah violation that was committed by Lisa Love Cummings, and that's why she was penalized as an employee of the township. And that all appears in the settlement agreement. And so, you know, it'd be nice if we didn't have to go through all this spin. It would be nice if I didn't have to return to the issue. But I'm going to keep returning to the issue until basically this committee stops withholding public documents. I hope that I don't have to return to the executive session ordinance, because there's a provision in that ordinance, which is in what you adopted, that all closed session minutes get from beginning January of 2017 are put on the website. And I know that was the township's recommendation, and I appreciate that recommendation. I think it's a really good idea that closed session minutes that have been completed are put up on the website for people to review.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Chief Kennard?
I said, quick, Ann Kennard, 42 Pine Court. I just wanted to say, for the past 4.5 months that I've been here, Chief, I really appreciate all the help the ladies downstairs have given me. And every time I come talk to Doug, you know, they appreciate the help and them guiding me through me learning the paperwork that I need to do. So I just wanted to publicly thank them all for helping me and continuing to help me going forward. Thank you,
Chief. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to close the public portion. This time we're going to go with it.
1 second.
Yes.
I just want to follow up and answer one thing from Mr. Brooks. I don't want him to go home wondering. We are going to issue a written report when we're finished. We never, it's never my position, and I resent the fact that you used the word squeeze on the fire company. I never said that. My discussions with the president of the fire company was that we were going to discuss things. There's nothing that's been determined. We are looking at options of other areas, what other people do. So that's the only thing that we're doing. We're not looking to make any changes that we know of. We're looking to look at this contract and see what's the best thing for Tabernacle and the best thing for the fire company that provides the fire service for our town. That's all we're doing. It's a fact-finding thing that we're doing at the moment. So there's not a squeeze or something, a decision that's being made. Nothing's been made because I haven't even spoken to the people yet. So just so you know, we haven't made any pre-decisions. We don't have any predeterminations of what we're doing. We're going to them with open minds to speak to them and then speak to us so we can come up with something that works. Just so you know. And it will be written when we're finished.
Can you clarify who you're talking to in terms
No,
of...
I'm not going to clarify who I'm talking to until we're done.
Can I finish what I was saying?
Go ahead.
Can you at least clarify what the process is? Because as I understood it, we're going to negotiate and actually meet with the leadership of the fire company to talk about the contract, things that the committee wanted and things that the fire company wanted to change it. There have been issues that have come up since the contract was signed 4 years ago, whatever it was, that they wanted to change. And the last I knew, we were going to be meeting with the fire company leadership to talk about that. And as I understand it, there have been no meetings, but there's been a lot of side conversations with other people involved. And I'm trying to understand what exactly we're trying to accomplish as a committee and what our process is. That's what's confusing to me.
I actually just told you what we're doing. We're in the process of making a decision of the best contract for the township to provide the best fire services, working with both. So we're finding information out as we go. We have no decisions, no ideas until we sit down and speak to the president and the chief, because they're the two integral pieces of the puzzle that you have to talk to, because you can't come up with something without speaking to them.
Okay, I would recommend that you referenced Arch Liston's report, November of 2018. It clearly outlines what the position is and where things are from a fire standpoint.
When did I do that?
November 2018 provided this committee with a report.
That is correct.
And I would just recommend you refer to that if you have a lot of questions.
Mayor, I did just want to respond again to Ms. Brooks. At the risk of begetting more contentiousness, I must say, and correct Ms. Brooks, that a court doesn't make any findings unless there's a trial. So a consent order is just that, a consent order, an agreement between the parties. So the characterization that there was any type of finding, or that she prevailed or didn't prevail, is just not an accurate characterization.
Okay, at this time we're going to go into executive session, closed session 10-282-019, whereas the Open Public Meetings Act PL 1975, Chapter 231 permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances doesn't exist, and whereas the governing body wishes to discuss litigation matter with respect to Fran Brooks versus Tabernacle Township, EUR-L-00265-19. Whereas minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires the confidentiality, the minutes can be made public. So now therefore be resolved that the public will be excluded from this meeting. Be it further resolved after executive session, we will open a meeting in which action may or may not be taken. So the committee will be convening downstairs. Everyone is welcome to stay here. If you should decide to stay, and as I said, we may or may not take action when we return. Thank you. Have a motion to go into executive session. Motion to go into executive.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
The mayor's motion.
I don't think there's going to be any.
I'll get to the point where
I don't suspect there's going to be any. Really? But you can certainly check.
We'll stay. You're there.